All right, welcome to episode 17 of the Worksties. 17 is Life Path 8. That is the executives at work. And their element is Earth. We have a guest today, Toby, with Social Jobs. So shout out to socialjobs.com for sponsoring this episode of the Worksties. Check them
Thank
out.
you.
Yeah, to make your job social. All right, Danielle, I'm going to kick it over to you to walk us through how we met Toby and began to work with them, and then we'll kick off the episode.
Welcome, Toby. Glad you
Thank
could
you.
join
Good to
us,
be here.
especially since you're the sponsor. It's great to have you on to kind of tell
I've
us
been
your
looking
story.
forward to this.
Great. So Toby and I met back when pre-pandemic, when someone at the company that I was working at, Helix, introduced me to Toby and the services he provided along the lines of marketing jobs to social networks, social sites, or socially. And he and I started working together on some different accounts that we had, and then kind of stopped working together during the pandemic and all of that. And then we kind of reconnected over the last year. I started doing some work with him with social jobs and writing some articles and things. And then he was interested in sponsoring our podcast. That's where we are today. Toby, tell us a little bit about your career journey up to this point.
Yeah, thank you. So my background was in job boards. Spent like a lot of people, I kind of fell into the recruiting industry, right? I found a job on a job board and thought, hold on, how does this work? They will pay me to, to sell these job ads. So I kind of stumbled into this and had a very nice career in job boards. The challenge that employers have with job boards is when you post a job, you're very reliant on candidates coming in and applying to the job with very few options on how you can push that job further, how you can promote it, how you can stand out. So I started using social media to promote some of our clients' jobs. And this was back in 2016, 2017. This was very new. Ads on social media were very low cost, and the results were just, they just blew clients away. So I decided, hey, this is an opportunity. People really should start using social media directly to promote their jobs. And so I took that leap, the leap that, everyone kind of thinks about taking at some time. I did it. And so far it's worked out. And we've been doing social media ads for jobs for about 8 years.
Awesome. So if your next best hire is on social media, how do you reach them? So tell us a little bit more about that. What platforms do you go to? How do you find the right talent, right place at the right time where they live, work, and play?
Absolutely. So there's social media is a broad umbrella. And I think if you asked most companies if they're using social media for recruiting, they'd say yes. And that's probably because they're using LinkedIn and they classify that as social. Their recruiters are probably using it at an individual level, sharing jobs, trying to network with people, looking up candidates. The thing that a lot of employers are yet to really fully take advantage of is doing sponsored ads. And that's the piece that we step in to help companies with. Organic engagement on social media is really low. It's terrible. Marriott, who has a great brand, 1.3 million followers on their careers page, but their organic posts get single digit, low double digit engagement. Really, really difficult if you're trying to just post something and hope that people come in and find it. It's a lot of work. It's very little return. So what we do is we deal with the sponsored side, and you put money behind it. You jump to the front of the queue and you can just place ads right in front of those people that you want. Much more efficient use of time, very efficient use of your recruiting budget. And for those that are daunted by that, don't know how to do that, haven't done that before, that's what we're here for.
Tell us about your greatest success story. Client was looking for talent, could not fill the role. What'd you do? How'd you find them? Where'd the talent come from? What was your solve?
There's many. The light bulb moment for me very early on was promoting career events. And for a couple of $100 of spend, we were getting hundreds of people to career events for high volume roles. I mean, that was amazing. And we've had verifiable data back from clients where 50% of their hires have come from Facebook, and they've filled 40 positions just off a single Facebook campaign, which cost them hundreds or low $1,000 campaigns. And there's many cases like that with these high volume roles. Equally as important though is hard to fill roles. That's where really we're really addressing a pain point, and that's a broad spectrum. Everyone is on social media somewhere, so no matter what the role is, that person's on social media somewhere. So you just have to pick the right site. So whether it's hard to fill corporate roles with people that have very relevant industry experience, people that have worked in the energy sector in a sales role, for example, we've had success finding VP level candidates that really have the type of background that people want. Equally, for your everyday manufacturing careers, maintenance technicians, machine operators, those type of in demand but hard to fill roles. You might not be getting very much through the job boards, but you can definitely find those candidates on social media fairly easily, and it doesn't take much to get in front of them, get them engaged, and get them in jobs. And that's a really popular job for our clients.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone yesterday that had general labor. So, like, how do you solve for that? So it was a whole conversation around, one, they're not typically looking, they could be looking for jobs on job boards, things like that. But if you're able to serve up socially content to say, hey, you might be interested in this job, you have a higher convert rate to get them into the funnel, into the system,
Yeah.
and then over to hire. I think that's great. Tell us the shift you've seen in social. So we've heard a lot about Gen Z, how we use it in Gen X, what that looks like. What have you noticed? What are some of the trends? How do you view that at social jobs and grab that attention as it constantly
Yeah,
shifts as well?
it is constantly shifting. Yeah. It's very hard to keep up with. There's two big shifts. There's shifts in how the candidates or how the users behave, and then there's shifts in how the social media sites themselves behave. Um, Candidates, it's very much about sort of demographics. Different generations, are using different platforms. So depending on who you're trying to connect with, the type of roles you're trying to fill, you might have to change up your strategy. Social media is not ubiquitous. You really have to be quite selective about where you go. And that continues, and that's shifting all the time. And it can be very hard to keep up with that. I think the more impactful change though is the way that social media companies have changed. And we talked about the loss of sort of organic marketing. You know, there's no free lunch anymore. I don't remember the statistic. You could make one up because they're just crazy. There's something like 1 billion posts on X every day. It's probably 1 billion posts on TikTok. There's 100 million posts on LinkedIn. You're not standing out from that crowd. You see posts that get a lot of attention and you think, oh, I can do that. It's 1 in 1 million that actually get very much attention. So organic and it really doesn't work very much anymore. Social media sites have really changed their algorithms for engagement. And of course, just like bad news sells, engagement is, you've seen it all, right? It's not clickbait exactly. Sometimes it's rage bait though. It's just, here's 100-ton press squashing an alarm clock, that gets people's attention. And social media sites have really started to, what I would say is, instead of providing value sort of organically to people, useful and helpful things like maybe good career opportunities, they're really tailoring their algorithms for maximum engagement. And so that's what people have to fight with. And it really comes back to, again, with the sponsored campaign, you're sidestepping all of that. You're paying to go to the front of the queue. And it's really what you have to do, because we can't all go viral.
Yeah, and I would say that LinkedIn is likely one of the most curated because so much of it is dependent upon your personal network and who you're connected to. So if you're, third connection to someone, you may not see a post that they have unless it is sponsored or unless somebody that you know engages with it. So it's even more curated, I would think, than Facebook or well, probably more than TikTok for sure, but in Instagram as well. I remember back in the day with Instagram, and I was running a business on the site, and you would be telling people refresh, 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 so you can see the new posts of new things that you were selling if you were doing a sale. And then they changed the algorithm, and that completely went away, which was really frustrating for a lot of people. So I imagine it's the same with anything. Like, you're trying to get instant engagement, instant feedback from something that you shared, and it could take weeks or maybe never
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
any kind of traction on something.
Yeah, competition on social is huge. There's so much competition, and it's not all good. You're fighting bots. You're fighting AI generated content. People want authentic content, but at the moment, at least, a lot of the algorithms that sites use, they're not really pushing, authentic, helpful content. They're pushing what gets clicks and what gets time, and that's not as helpful.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a little bee in my bonnet when it comes to LinkedIn a bit because remember back in the day, and this just goes to show like how much social media has truly shifted. Because back in the day when LinkedIn started, it was don't you connect with anyone, just anyone. You make sure you know that person, you make sure that you're connecting for a reason, and all of these things, right? So that's how I managed my network back in the day. And I declined so many people and I didn't add them like, they're not in my world. They're not in staffing. They're not in RPO. They're not in talent acquisition. And now I regret it because I'm like, man, if I had all those connections and followers today, my algorithm would pick up even more than it already does. So I think also fundamentally, when we think about how these social media platforms have shifted and have changed, their instructions and directions became very different too. Because even Facebook was like, don't you go adding random strangers. You don't know those people and what to do. But now it actually helps you, and they have the creators on Facebook and everything else. So it, to your point, has become really interesting in how they have shifted themselves and even their talk tracks based on how you should now interact and engage with their platform.
LinkedIn's a great example because rage bait content does great on there. I see all the time someone will post something and then people will just copy and paste it because it's something that really captures people's frustrations or their emotions. And then you've got 5 people just reposting the same sort of rage bait content, and very hard to compete against that.
Yeah. Or they say something just so off the wall to catch people like to that rage bait, but just really off the wall. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? But that's the whole point. They want people to engage with it, even if it's not something that's correct or it misrepresents something, whatever it might be. It's just all about, can I get eyes on this? I saw someone recently who posted, what was it? It was just a repost of, I think it was like another job or something like that. And they added a bunch of comments to it to one talk about that job, but what it did was lifted that job even more. So more people applied to it, more people commented on that. So the visibility, and Danielle and I have talked about this too. It's all about the visibility. Like a lot of people don't care if it's negative or positive visibility. They just want it lifted so people's eyes are on it, which I think is a little bit of a dangerous game to play. I think you know,
Agree. Would you say, Toby, that with things that you've shared, and I assume that you've done some sort of a sponsorship of content on LinkedIn, do you feel like it does work just as well as opposed to something that's getting that sort of rage interaction, or is it just different?
Well, so I've used LinkedIn sponsored ads, sponsored in-mails for our own business. I find those to be very effective. LinkedIn is just very expensive.
Hmm.
I mean, the
Oh
price
yeah,
is, I don't know how they can look at you with a straight face. And
couldn't agree more.
so, yeah, certainly effective. In our own business, I've tried to step back from doing sponsored content and trying to build more presence organically. You're really trading your budget for your time because it takes a lot of time investment. I think it'll be worthwhile for us ultimately. We do use LinkedIn sponsored marketing tools for our clients' jobs. And those are very effective because clients have a need they need to fill. They have a budget. So that's fine. And they're getting a really good return on that. They're filling roles that might go out to a staffing agency soon if they don't fill that internally. So trying something like a sponsored ad and a sponsored in-mail campaign on LinkedIn, that could be a really valuable step to take before going out to like a staffing agency, a headhunter, and trying to get some interest for that role. So absolutely, it really does work very well. But in my experience, in my own business, we don't have unlimited budget, and for the prices they charge,
Yeah.
every
That's
time you
kind of
click
what I,
someone's ad, that's probably cost them $5.
Yeah.
right. Oh, sure. Yeah. And that makes sense to me because I think, even on our site, on our LinkedIn page for the Worksties, we post content and it's suggesting that we, sponsor it, add revenue to it or add dollars to it to try to generate more interaction. And, we haven't gone that route because we don't have the funding for that. And I feel like, for us, because we're kind of doing this organically, to some degree, that we are probably better suited to invest that money elsewhere in other things.
Well, to throw something back at you guys, I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. For a long time, I've wanted somebody to take what's going on in the recruiting industry, condense it down, package it, and make it digestible for me. And I haven't seen many people do that in a good way. So for viewers that don't know, this is why Danielle writes for the Social Jobs blog. Subscribe for free at socialjobs.com, because there's so much knowledge that could really help those small HR teams, business owners trying to figure out recruiting on their own, recruitment teams trying to be as efficient and productive as possible. And there's really a lack of good quality content, which is people really sharing their experience. The people that have done this for a long time that really know what works and what doesn't. And so our own strategy with the Social Jobs blog is to take people like Danielle and share that knowledge, provide that value, not go the rage bait route, but actual tangible value that people can really use. And I think in the long run, that's a much better use of the platform. It's why we sponsor the Worksties podcast, because you guys are very aligned with us on that belief about sharing knowledge and sharing experience. So yeah, credit to you guys, and that's why we're sponsors.
Thank you. That's well said. That's really kind of you to say. And I do feel like you know, it is sort of a missing segment because I think, and Jennifer and I have talked about this too, that if you're kind of newer to the industry, you don't have the benefit of having been around through a lot of the evolution of what we've seen over the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And there's certainly more to it than we probably ever, touched on. But, just to like a site like LinkedIn, we couldn't have really imagined to Jennifer's point earlier about your connections and your network, how much of an impact that might have later down the line in our careers. Same with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. But even further to how Indeed has changed, how Career Builder and Monster are even still players, but they're much more, minor roles. But at one time, they were the two, big sites at that time. So it's really interesting that if you don't have that sort of perspective, and not everybody's going to, obviously, but just to kind of understand how we got here, I think is really important for people to help them in making decisions. Because if you're only using LinkedIn, you're only using Indeed, and you don't really understand how much they've changed over the years and how much they haven't changed in terms of like cost. And, LinkedIn's always been an incredibly expensive tool, by a long shot compared to other tools. And that hasn't changed. And yet, outside of how we interact with the feed, their technology hasn't really changed. And same with Indeed, they present themselves in a different way. But if you go and kind of look at how the tool has evolved from a recruiter perspective, a candidate perspective, it hasn't changed. And now they're starting to, look at Indeed for the candidate, sort of a premium I think it's it's a premium subscription that you can pay for as a candidate to
Wow.
help you land a job. And right now it's only in Canada. Poor Canada, like they just got to be angry at America right now. But but that's something that years ago a site called The Ladders used to do, and that Ladders was for 100K plus jobs. You could sort of get a curated experience to help you find that job, and we were always against it because it was like Canada shouldn't have to pay for this. But now that companies are kind of pushing back and trying to do more for less, they're now starting to go towards the candidate because the desperation of people looking for work who are trying to find any way to get in front of a recruiter to get their resume seen. It's entirely likely that people will pay, even 9.99 a month, I think is what it was. Canadian was the price I heard.
Yeah,
I haven't verified that, but
I think it is. And you're right.
9.99, is that right?
I think so. Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah. So, $10 a month, well, that's cheaper than Netflix, right? So maybe they're thinking, everybody has all these premium partnerships or, platforms that they're already paying for subscriptions. Maybe, this is just one more and they'll see it as a value. But I would hazard to say if you're paying for that for 6 months, a year, and you haven't gotten a job, the retaliation on that is going to be
Mhm.
huge, right? If you've used it and you followed their recommendations and their feedback, whatever that may look like, and you didn't find a job from it, I'm not sure if I'd want to be on the opposite end of that conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah, that could make for some bad PR.
I would agree. I think charging candidates is not one the right way because they're trying to find work, right? They're looking. They might not have a job, so that 9.99 could have went to something else, cup of coffee, whatever it might be. It's not that much, but in the whole big scheme of things, to your point,
Or,
Danielle, unless you're guaranteeing me a job, right? And then does their subscription become, I always like to assume what happens next. So does their subscription
right,
become, when you think about Indeed Flex in that staffing arena, right now we have these candidates ready to serve up, but still it's not a good look from a candidate experience standpoint. And what they keep doing is ostracizing employers, ostracizing candidates, trying to build onto their tech platform, become a tech platform. And then at what point do you become a technology versus a candidate job board database to be able to find people and really shift in the market? Because I think they're just grasping at straws right now because they're seeing their revenues go down and they project it. They have growth. When I look, you look at that billions of dollars that they have, they see growth every single year, and it's because of the things they do and how they pivot and change and say, oh, now I got to deal with this now. And everybody has been kind of handcuffed to them. But I think, things like social jobs and other social coming out of all of this, that's where the next play is. So, based on that, Toby,
right.
question for you. Where do you see
Mhm.
employers going wrong the most when it comes to social? Like, if you could give them here's a quick guide, 3 tips or 2 tips, where do they go wrong? And how do you help in that instance?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just touch on your last point, actually, because I think it ties in nicely. If LinkedIn's moving to a subscription model for job seekers, if that sticks, at some point, the prices will start to go up for that. There'll be extra features. And at what point does that start to become, sort of gatekeeping careers? And only people that are paying are really getting, to the front of the queue.
Well,
And with
LinkedIn has that today with the premium, and this is what I was referring to as the new one that Indeed is launching. So I think they're trying to kind of position themselves in the same way that LinkedIn does. And LinkedIn has a, monetized version for candidates that helps you to check how you are compared to other candidates. I never really felt like it gave me value in a job search. And at some point I decided I didn't feel like the $30 a month it was charging me was valuable. But I mean, there's probably others who do, but I would reckon that it's probably not as valuable as they would like you to believe that it is.
Yeah, surely. Companies that want to sort of sidestep that, I mean, that could look bad on a company if people are having to pay to get their foot in the door. Social media is another way that companies can really take their jobs to candidates directly in a way that is a much better experience for the candidate, can engage candidates in a better way. So the two ways that companies could really improve in social media, I'd say one is, I'm going to say, this is just my own experience, but I'm going to say 95% of companies have actually not really got their hands around sponsored social media. We've worked with Fortune 500 companies that did not have a strategy or even a person or a team dedicated to leveraging social media in a sort of proactive way where they're running sponsored campaigns. Some don't do anything. Some might have a career site up where they're posting some content. And some companies, they do this really well, but I think they're in the minority. They're maybe consumer facing brands that, like Starbucks, is leveraging their brand, and they can get a lot of engagement on social. I think they are one that do that really well. But even big, public companies often have really not taken that leap. So for those companies, that is what we're here for. We work as an extension of their team. They don't need to hire someone and take them through this very steep learning curve, because social media is a minefield of particularly regulations, very tight regulations around employment advertising. The tools can be very complex to use, very time intensive. If you're trying to learn as you go, it can be a real hard time. So we can alleviate that. Companies that don't want to do it themselves, we can support them however they need. For those that do it, I would say most actually do it pretty well. Companies that are using social media, particularly those that have kind of stuck with it and used it consistently, I mean, they've really invested in taking the time to learn and understand. But a couple of tips. You really have to turn your job descriptions from a list of requirements into something that sells. And you really have to come with the hooks first. It's simple stuff, but what matters most to the candidates? They want to know how much they're going to get paid, and they want to know what the shift times are. If that's not right at the top, you're not giving candidates the information that they really need to make a decision. And if you're not sharing that information at all, and you're asking the candidate to go through a long process to get that information, you're just not going to be successful. So making sure that information is out there is key. And the other one is, social media has really moved to short form video content. That doesn't mean that employers have to start producing videos. That just makes that difficulty curve go up, another 300%. But you don't have to create actual videos to advertise in things like reels and stories. You can put a static image, you can run it as a reel, you can have music overlay it, it can display for 10 seconds, it can have a call to action. So if you're creating ads, but you're not putting them on things like reels and stories, whether on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc., you're really missing like a huge part of the market, because there's a lot of people, they don't scroll down, they scroll left and right. So making sure that they're visible there, yeah, that's key.
Your point about job advertising, regulations, things like that, I think that for a long time, I don't know if this is still the case, but a lot of companies would think, oh, we can just hire an intern, somebody entry level who can manage our social media presence. And I think that is such the wrong the wrong solution. Really, you need people who understand what they're doing and have experience and can help guide the conversation and respond to things as a lot of things change quite quickly. So I think that's a really good point that you made there, especially around job advertising, and that there is, things that have to be considered from a legal perspective, and that can change. There can be different regulations in different counties of the same state, let alone, you know, nationally too. So that's a really great point.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, it's actually more of a technical challenge than anything else. That the tools are very
Okay.
technical. So yeah, with along with the rules and the regulations, actually how these sites function, and how you go in and set up campaigns, it's what you see with like Wendy's. Wendy's has great social media accounts with great engagement, very funny content going out. That's wonderful, but that's not the skill set that works on the back end. Yeah,
Right.
there's a lot behind this, a lot behind the curtain
Yeah.
that yeah,
I've
scares
learned it
people away.
takes 2.2 seconds to get kicked off of Google ads. One wrong thing in the URL, you're out of there. Like they'll take that down, and especially if Yeah, companies doing it for you. You have to be so careful with who is doing it on your behalf because they get it
We,
wrong. They're shutting down your Google ads, and to get that back, man, that's a long
That's a
we've
good
process.
we've
point.
we've had our accounts suspended. We've been kicked off platforms, had our accounts suspended.
Yeah.
You can usually get them back. One time we didn't. We were banned
Mhm.
forever. We had to start again, and it was all because I was trying to rush out a campaign while at the airport. Just missed one thing, one checkbox I didn't check, and the hammer came down, and we were kicked off a platform permanently. Hasn't happened for a long time now.
Yeah.
That's only because we've been there and we've done it that we don't fall in those traps anymore.
Yeah.
You only
If
have
you're
to make
new,
that mistake
you
one
probably will.
time, and that's
Yeah. A lot of
One's
lessons
good. I probably
learned.
made that mistake 3 times, but
yeah.
I got banned from
yeah.
Etsy on Osreen, and they would not tell me why, and there was no appealing it.
Oh,
But
that's the
yeah,
worst.
I
Heard of
know.
somebody
Hmm.
else who got their banned from Etsy. That's interesting.
For life,
Yeah,
Danielle.
Yeah.
For life.
for
Someone
life.
else can go in and do it for me now. Like they can have my brand and sell it, but as far as me having my brand myself through my links, forget it. So getting it right
Interesting.
and really understanding all the parameters and provisions of all the different social media sites, man. I'm so glad you're here, Toby. Doing what you do every single day.
We need you.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've taken those hits.
Yeah, and learn the lessons. I was thinking about when you were talking about the reels, and there's a lot of companies who are afraid to use social influencers. It's so new in the space when you think about that social influencing, and we've done a couple. We did an after hours on it. We did a full episode on social influencing, and you bringing up the reels and putting that as the content to me really struck a chord because I know there are a lot of companies out there like, I don't know what else they're promoting and what they're doing. And so I feel like that's a really good solution for people and really smart, as you think about how do you set up your social media and get in front of people and be in all those different avenues. How do you see, have you done video and then also the reel within that?
Yeah, really interesting question, and one that really comes back to the audience, I think, because different demographics tend to go into one bucket. For the longest time, I would scroll down like Facebook or Instagram, scroll down, look at posts. I ignored like reels and stories for I don't know how long, way too long. I didn't use it, and so I didn't see or understand the opportunity there. And there's a lot of people that are still in that state and still are used to scrolling down feed. So having those posts, which I suppose would be the traditional, let's call that the traditional way of doing ads on social media is posts, that still gets a lot of people that use social media in that way. But as you look to some of the groups like Gen Z, they don't really scroll down and look at posts. I mean, they're using reels and stories. So it really depends on the audience that you're going after. Now, as far as a general overview of video versus sort of images, so in my experience, videos get more engagement. So they perform better. You have people's attention for longer, but they come at about double the cost.
Mm.
And so for some roles, we actually have some clients where we've done video campaigns. Sometimes we'll do them in parallel with images just to mix things up. But for their demographic, which is like truck drivers, they don't get as much engagement through the video posts. They get better engagement, but it comes at twice the cost. So as far as getting the most out of their budget, images still works better because that's the way that audience is kind of used to using social media. So totally opposite, for some people. Really depends on the roles that you're going after.
Yeah. If you have your crystal ball out, what's next in the world of social recruiting, social media advertising? Where do you see the biggest impacts? Give us your outlook.
I think overall more companies are going to use social over time. I mean, we've already seen you've shared some great insights into this with me, Jennifer, that the upcoming generations will go to TikTok or YouTube maybe or Instagram to find answers to all of their questions about careers and life and other things. They're not going to Google to search for career information. They're going to talk. So I think over time, more employers are going to have to shift to social, because otherwise they're going to miss a lot of people. So it's not even inevitable. It's happening right now. It's a big shift, and I think that's only going to go one way. So yeah.
I think that's a really good point, because I know for myself, growing up back in the day, sound really old now, but we used to have to go to the library to look up something and use a card catalog. It's like the old school way to do things, right? And then evolving to using the internet, Google. And now I found, like, if there's something I want to see how to do something, or if I need information, like about my washing machine, let's just use hypothetically, I'll kind of go onto YouTube and I'll search for it. And then that way I know I can get a quick how to or instruction on what I'm looking for. Whereas in the past, I would have gone to Google. But I think the same applies to people who are familiar more with TikTok, that they would do the same thing. And what's interesting about using YouTube is that it's owned by Google. So I'd probably find the same information if I put it on Google, and then it might direct me if I was looking for a video. And I think that's how I kind of started doing it, and then realized, oh, I can just go to YouTube and find it. And so, I've kind of modified the way that I search for things now too, in a way that I didn't, and that sort of evolved. But I don't think everybody does that, of course. But it is interesting, because I can see how, for somebody who's younger, who's comfortable on a site like TikTok, that rather than going to Google, because that might give them too many results, or they're not the right one, or they want to see a quick video, who knows? They just feel more comfortable. So they'll open up the app and search that way. So it is really interesting how everybody's mind kind of functions and has been sort of trained in a certain way of how they're going to obtain information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I ask Jupiter everything when Jupiter doesn't know. That's my first go-to is I go to my Jupiter,
Then, if
ask the
Jupiter doesn't
question.
know,
Yeah. I want it to do so many more things than it already does. I'm like, can you get to the programming already portion of it? Really fully do
give it
things.
time.
I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that. What other topics, Toby, when you think about getting your message out about social jobs, what you do, how you do it, what's interesting and how we're shifting and evolving? What do you want to make sure listeners know, potential candidates know?
So I think for employers, our message is really that I'll say this, my own sort of tagline, if I gave myself one, was sort of making our clients look good, because companies usually come to us with their hardest challenge. It's like last mile delivery. It's like, they fill 95% of their jobs through Indeed just fine. And that's great. We're not trying to take away from that. But for that 5% of roles that people have, they might need to change their strategy. If something's not working, you've got to do something different. People might be surprised actually what they can do to fill some of these positions. And social media is one of those things. It's something that you can use in so many different ways. Every campaign is different. For every job, we take a different approach. And the value we have, I would consider a low cost, high value product. So I would say, if you think of a scale that has sort of job boards like Indeed at one end, which are, let's say, low cost and low value, not in the sense that they don't deliver, because they provide a lot of value, but they're limited in their abilities, right? If you can fill a job on Indeed, it's great. But if you're not getting any applicants, that's it. That's kind of like the end of the road. The other end of the scale, you have staffing agencies, and you can pay a staffing agency $30,000 to fill any job you like. Very valuable resource, but it's very high cost. And often with social media, we can bridge the gap by offering a product that's priced more like a job board. But we can really sometimes deliver that type of candidate you might have expected from a staffing agency. We can be really targeted with who we get ads in front of. We can make it very easy for them to engage with things like mobile quick apply, offering a really great candidate experience, which is something you guys have delved into. Big issue in the industry, something employers have been really slow to really address, if address at all. So letting us, serve up a fairly low cost product, but with a really high value proposition, which is getting the job in front of the right people and making it easy for that candidate to respond. That's what works, and it works in the vast majority of situations. Says think of a job, and that candidate is on social media somewhere. You just got to find the right site and get in front of them. But they're out there. There's only a few people out there that don't use social media.
I would say too that, to your point, um, staffing agencies should probably be working with you more closely too,
Yeah.
because if the only solution that they're offering to a prospective client is that they're posting the job on Indeed, and that's not to say that that's what staffing companies are doing, but as a part of the
Better
solution, they
not
should
be.
be using a yeah, like they should be using a variety of sources, and if one
Yes.
of them is social, you know, they should be doing that too. So I would say that that's probably would be a good solution for staffing companies. The other question I was going to ask you is, have you found that with clients that you worked with who maybe do bring that 5% of jobs that are really hard to fill to you, and then they complete that process, and then maybe they go away and then they come back, maybe they're doing seasonal hiring or they have another big growth period, do you find that they're engaging with you differently the second time, third time, fourth time around, where maybe they're bringing more of their jobs to you in the beginning rather than waiting till the end? How is that impact? I'm just kind of curious is if that impacts their engagement with you.
Yeah, so the typical client life cycle for us, we have a very low barrier to entry. So new clients will typically come on, they'll try a job, they'll always give us their hardest job. So it's a real challenge. I was actually looking at this over the weekend, and 70% of those clients that come on and try a job with us become a long-term repeat customer. And we operate on a model that lets clients do campaigns as and when they need to. They're not locked into any type of volume commitments. So we will see a client come in and try a job, try two, maybe try five if the locations that they're having a hard time staffing for. And then people will come back every time they have a meeting and someone's talking to a hiring manager, and the hiring manager is saying this position has been open for 60 days. What can we do? We find usually if it's like a HR business partner, they can offer us as a solution. Often the hiring manager will pick up the budget to run a campaign for them, which is great because TA budgets are always shrinking, always under scrutiny. So clients start pitching it internally, and that tends to spread. And if it's a manufacturing company with 20 locations, we'll start seeing more and more of those locations come in and start using us. And that's great. It means we're doing a good job.
Yeah, definitely. I want to tack on to like going back to the staffing piece of it. And I would see where it would be a really good opportunity to work with social jobs, because typically when someone goes to staffing, it's they don't have enough staff to fulfill the roles. What they're using staffing for is to find that quality candidate, right? Make sure the screening's done, make sure when someone shows up at the door that they're ready to go. So I see that there would be a big need for what you do with staffing organizations, RPOs, things of that nature, because when you think about the cost play, it's typically to have more hands on deck to screen and get through that talent and make sure it's qualified. Making sure that you're able to fill that pipeline becomes really important in that work.
Absolutely. And that's where I've personally worked with Danielle in the past is with staffing companies, everyone's looking at the cost per hire, time to fill rate. We're very sensitive to that. We have to deliver to those benchmarks. And my tagline about helping our clients look good, the type of feedback that I would get is that, hey, we filled these roles and this has been open 60 or 90 days. And, this has made their client happy. It's made them look like a superhero. And that's one of the best things about the job, getting that type of feedback.
All right, Toby, rapid fire section for questions. Hey. So this or that to start off with, job ad or meme?
I'm going to go meme. Yeah. Love humor. More memes. Yes, please.
What's your favorite meme?
My favorite meme. Oh God. Oh God. Pass. Too many. Too many.
Mine, I use a lot the girl with the sunglasses that puts them on like, oh, I can't be bothered. That's one of my favorite ones. All right,
Oh,
Instagram
God.
story or TikTok?
In Instagram. I'm an Instagrammer. Love my nature photos. I do love to do nature photography, and
Cool.
I like to be on Instagram for that.
Oh yeah,
All
I
about
do
the
some
gram.
nature stuff. Yeah, love the gram.
Oh yeah.
All right,
I'll have to
pass.
Need more
follow
of
you.
that. Need more.
Yeah. What type of nature do you do? Do you do like specific animals, birds, scenery, all of it?
And anything I can find. But that's usually birds. Birds are very accessible. I have some great owl pictures. It's a real
Cool.
privilege to be able to take some nice photographs of owls. So I love that. So yeah, more of that and less of the AI. If you go on Instagram and you look at owls, so much bad AI content on there. Yeah, so less of that, more of the real stuff.
I
Agree.
agree.
Agree
Yeah.
1,000%. Passive candidate or ghost story?
Passive candidate or ghost story?
Which would you rather deal with?
Gosh, which would I rather deal with?
Yeah.
A passive candidate. I mean, there's hope, right? There's more hope there. So
All right, perfect. If social jobs had a theme song, what would be yours?
I'm gonna say Eye of the Tiger. Tiger is my spirit animal. I was born in the year of the tiger.
Cool.
Majestic, beautiful animal. Yeah, it resonates with me. I don't know if it would work as well for social jobs, but for me, yeah, tiger's my spirit animal.
I don't know because when for Helix, before any meeting we went into for a client, Eye of the Tiger, that was on the playlist. So you can definitely use it
There you
before any
go.
meetings. What would your personal theme
Yeah,
song be? Would
there
it
you
be
go.
the same Eye of the Tiger or would you change it?
You know, my personal theme song, it would probably be some sort of trance EDM song that no one would know.
I was not
And
expecting that. Okay.
oh yeah, I spent my early years going to the Netherlands to go to dance parties and big EDM events. So yeah, that's my background. But
Do you
Very cool.
know how to flow? Is my next question then. You know what flowing is, yeah? You know the concept with
I
the
don't know what
handkerchiefs,
flowing
the
is.
scarf. So it's when people at those concerts, my niece does this. And she's so good at it. But it's you toss around the handkerchief and then you do it like a pizza and you flip it in all these different ways. It's called Flow Me. And it's flowing. You should look it up. There's some really interesting every time I'm mesmerized. She's on TikTok, she's on Instagram doing it, and I get mesmerized by it. So it's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
love all of those performances.
Yeah.
Lot of people got a lot of talent, and that's not me. That's not me.
You just bop
Love
around.
to see it. Yeah, yeah. I like it nice and dark, so no one can see me, and I can just dance. You know. Yeah.
Got it. And then describe the job market right now using emojis. What would they be?
Well, you know, I'm gonna represent the recruiters out there, and that's got to be the smiling, crying face. A lot of people holding strong, trying to stay positive, but crying on the inside. Yeah.
Yeah, we
That's
just
a good
always
one.
say there's no crying in recruiting, but there is. You just got to do it under your desk.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a tough market for a number of years. Shout out to everyone staying positive.
Yeah, definitely. It is hard to stay positive, and for everyone that's able to do that, man, resilience. We've already talked about the grit. We're tired of having grit, but it's there. You need it to get through.
Tired of having to be so resilient.
All right. Thanks for the rapid fire responses.
Is there anything that you'd like to say, Toby, in terms of
No, I mean, we talked a lot about social. We've talked about the impact that it can make, some of the opportunities that employers might be missing. Yeah, I think we've covered most of the important points.
Tell us where listeners can learn more about socialjobs.com and how to get in touch with you, Toby.
Yeah, absolutely. So employers go to socialjobs.com or look up social jobs on LinkedIn. We've got some information about the product there and how that might be able to help you. And then also check out the Social Jobs blog. It's also on the website. It's also on LinkedIn. Danielle writes for us. We have some other writers that have some great experience, bring some great perspectives. It's free. can subscribe to our email newsletter. You can subscribe to the newsletter on LinkedIn. What we're doing there is really sharing some of the industry secrets that you might not know about. Danielle's put together a 4-part series about how to negotiate those recruiting contracts, some really specific advice in there for dealing with Indeed and LinkedIn. That could really save you some money, could really make a big impact. So if you go to socialjobs.com, go to the blog, subscribe with your email address, you'll get those articles from Danielle as soon as they come out. And we're really excited to share that.
Very
Looking
exciting.
forward to getting feedback on that. And we have a link, all of our episodes to Social Jobs as a sponsor in our show notes too. So we always have that there for you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for being our guest today, Toby. Shout out to Social Jobs for sponsoring the Worksties. We truly appreciate you. Like, follow, share, comment. Danielle, you want to close us out?
Yeah, you can find us on all the listening platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. We're everywhere where you can either listen or view our content. You can buy us a copy. There's a link in the show notes along with the link to socialjobs.com. So like, comment, subscribe, follow, share with a friend.
All that good stuff.
Yep, hit that
And
bell.
we'd love some feedback. If you found a job that you're in or you have a good story about, maybe connecting with a company via social media, we'd love to hear your story. So feel free to leave a comment or shoot us an email.
All right. Until next time.